After spending 3 miserable years in corporate finance, I realized I needed to change. When I saw the job posting for an assistant manager position at this place, it seemed perfect. I'd always been good with kids, and the idea of helping create happy memories appealed to me way more than staring at spreadsheets all day. The job was everything I hoped for. Sure, there were occasional difficult customers, but watching kids' faces light up during their birthday parties made it all worth it. That is, until last Saturday, when I encountered the most entitled parent I've ever met in my life. I was in the middle of my usual weekend tasks, and my managers had asked me to clean some rugs that had gotten pretty grimy from all the foot traffic. I took them to our back area and started cleaning them with dish soap and warm water. The process required me to keep running back to our concession area to get more soapy water, which I was carrying in our clear plastic drink pitchers since they were perfect for the job. On one of my trips back with fresh soapy water, this woman suddenly appeared in front of me like she'd materialized out of thin air. She was wearing this gaudy outfit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and she had that "I want to speak to your manager" energy radiating off her. She immediately started demanding the pitchers, claiming they'd been waiting forever for their drinks. When I tried to explain that these weren't drinks, but soapy cleaning water, she wouldn't hear it. She insisted she could see the bubbles from the soda and accused me of trying to serve it to someone else. I tried explaining again that this was literally dish soap, but she cut me off, saying she wasn't an idiot and knew what soda looked like. She insisted these were obviously for her son's party and that I was trying to give them to someone else. I tried explaining several more times, but she just kept talking over me. At this point, I was getting frustrated, and clearly she wasn't going to listen to reason. Fine, I thought. If she wanted to learn the hard way, so be it. I put down my cleaning towel and handed her the pitchers. She made a snide comment about how that wasn't so hard, and suggested that some people needed to learn customer service. She waddled away with this smug look on her face like she'd just won some great victory. I went back to get more cleaning solution, shaking my head at what had just happened. I had just filled up 2 more pitchers when I heard screaming from the party area. The woman came charging at me like an angry bull, her outfit now sporting a large wet spot. Before I could react, she hurled the remaining contents of 1 pitcher at me. She missed, but I was so startled I lost my balance and went down hard on the floor. She started screaming accusations that I had tried to poison her son and that he could have died. I shouted back that I had repeatedly told her it was soap water, but she wouldn't listen. As it turned out, her precious son had taken a sip of the soapy water and immediately spit it out, throwing one of the pitchers in shock, which explained the wet spot on her clothes. Instead of accepting responsibility for her own stubbornness, she decided to blame me. Thankfully, our security cameras caught the whole thing. When my manager reviewed the footage, they didn't just kick her out, they called the police. Turns out throwing cleaning solutions at someone can be considered assault. She was arrested right there in front of all the party guests. The party kind of fell apart after that, with the birthday boy being escorted out with his mom by the police. The remaining parents were horrified, and we ended up giving all the kids free game tokens as a consolation. Later, we found out she was charged with assault and received a lifetime ban from our establishment. Her son, who was surprisingly mature about the whole thing, came back the next day with his dad to apologize. His father arranged for a new party the following weekend, this time without his ex-wife's presence. The kid got to have his birthday celebration after all, and I made sure to personally serve him actual soda, in cups, not pitchers. I've been working at this high-end electronics store for about 5 years now. Started right after college when the job market wasn't great, and honestly, I've grown to love it. We specialize in custom-built gaming PCs and rare collectible consoles, which attracts both genuine enthusiasts and, unfortunately, people who think money equals entitlement. Last month, we received a mint condition, unopened Nintendo 64 Pikachu edition. For those who don't know, these are incredibly rare. We're talking thousands of dollars. My manager put it in our premium display case with a price upon request tag, knowing a serious collector would understand its value. I was working the evening shift when a woman and her teenage son came in. The moment they walked through the door, I could tell they weren't our usual customers. The mother was wearing what looked like quite expensive clothes, and her son had that bored, disinterested look of someone who's never heard the word no. The son spotted the N64 in the case, and that's when everything started. He excitedly pointed at the yellow Nintendo console and told his mother he wanted it. Karen immediately assured her son he could have it and started looking around for help. She snapped her fingers at me like I was a dog. I took a deep breath and walked over. I greeted them with the usual customer service courtesy. Karen immediately demanded we wrap up the yellow Nintendo quickly, mentioning they had dinner reservations at 8 p.m. I explained that this was actually a collector's item, the Pikachu Edition N64, and told her of the $4,000 price tag. The son's eyes lit up, but Karen's face turned red. She scoffed at the price, calling it ridiculous, and offered $200, adding that even that was too much for what she called an old toy. When I explained that the price wasn't negotiable because it was a highly sought-after collector's item, she started throwing around threats. She claimed her husband was on the city council and threatened to shut our store down with one phone call. At this point, my manager heard the commotion and came over. He asked what the problem was, and Karen immediately accused me of trying to scam them by charging $4,000 for an old Nintendo. My manager backed me up, confirming the price and explaining again that it was a rare collector's item. This only made Karen more furious. She started ranting about how her son deserved it for his good grades and demanded to buy it at what she called a reasonable price. Then she did something that made my jaw drop. She reached over the counter trying to open the display case herself. When she couldn't, she grabbed a nearby display stand and threatened to throw it at the case. My manager warned her to step back or he'd call the police. Karen dared him to do it, shouting that her husband would have our jobs. She actually threw the display stand, but thankfully it missed the case and hit the wall instead. My manager immediately called the police while I tried to keep other customers away from the situation. The son just stood there looking mortified. The police arrived within minutes. One of the officers was a gaming enthusiast and immediately recognized the value of the N64. He wasn't impressed when Karen tried to downplay the situation by claiming she was just trying to buy a toy for her son. They arrested her for attempted vandalism and threatening behavior. Turns out her husband wasn't even on the city council. He worked as a middle manager at a local bank. When he came to the store the next day to apologize, he looked absolutely exhausted. Like this wasn't the first time he'd had to clean up after her behavior. The son came back a week later with his dad. The kid had been saving his allowance and doing extra chores, and his dad agreed to match his savings. They worked out a payment plan with my manager, and now that N64 sits in their game room, properly appreciated by someone who actually understands its value. I'm a pretty quiet and reserved person. Always have been. My friends often joke that I make Fluttershy from My Little Pony look outgoing. I get anxious when people raise their voices even slightly, and I can't handle watching anything with violence. I stick to calm cartoons instead. But this story isn't about my viewing habits. It's about how my pink hair led to one of the scariest moments of my life. I've always loved having pink hair. It's kind of become my signature look. Last July, I had just gotten it touched up at the salon and was taking the bus home, something I'd done countless times before without any issues. I chose a seat near the back where there weren't too many people around. I was quietly looking out the window when a young girl approached me. She sweetly told me she liked my hair and asked how it got to be that color. I nervously stammered out a reply explaining that I had just gotten it done at Crystal's salon where they color it. The girl seemed genuinely interested and sweet. She went back to her mother and I saw them pointing in my direction. I assumed she was asking about getting her own hair dyed. That's when everything went wrong. The mother stormed over and grabbed my shoulder roughly. She demanded that I get off the bus immediately. When I shakily asked why, trying desperately not to cry, she accused me of trying to corrupt her daughter with my hair. She grabbed my pink hair and yanked it hard enough to hurt my head. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. She went on a rant about how people only dye their hair if something is wrong with them, and she wouldn't let me turn her daughter into whatever weird thing I was into. That's when a fellow passenger with white dyed hair stepped in to help. He asked the mother what she was doing, but she rudely told him to stay out of it. He tried explaining that I hadn't done anything wrong, that her daughter had simply asked me about my hair. The mother told him to get lost, saying it didn't involve him. When he questioned how dyed hair meant anything weird, she turned on him too, saying he was just like me and she wouldn't let us turn her daughter into one of us. She kept pulling my hair harder, and I was openly crying now. Through my tears, I tried to insist that I wasn't into anything weird, but she shouted back, claiming that people only dye their hair if they're into weird things. The white-haired passenger tried reasoning with her, pointing out that I was a minor and that dyed hair didn't make someone weird. The young girl, showing more maturity than her mother, pleaded with her mom to leave me alone, saying I was scared. But her mother just dismissed her, telling her to let mommy handle this and not to listen to me. Other passengers started coming to help me, and finally the bus driver came to the back at the next stop. He told the mother to return to her seat, but she demanded that he throw me off the bus instead. When he tried explaining that I hadn't done anything wrong, she interrupted him, screaming about how I was trying to make her daughter like me and claiming we were a cult. The bus driver explained that he had seen everything and that I was just minding my own business. He gave her an ultimatum: either return to her seat or get off the bus. This made her completely lose it. She started screaming about how I was trying to corrupt her daughter, calling me horrible names and accusing everyone who defended me of being part of the supposed cult. When her daughter sat next to me to comfort me, the mother completely snapped. She slapped me so hard I fell off the seat and hit my head on another seat. I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. The other passengers had to forcibly keep her in her seat while the bus driver called the police. When she heard the police were coming, she acted smug, thinking they would take her side. The white-haired passenger reminded her about the bus's security cameras, but she just bragged about how rich she was and how she could bribe her way out of anything. When the police arrived, she tried spinning a completely different story. She claimed that after her daughter complimented my hair, I had insulted her, and when she confronted me about it, I had threatened and attacked her. The police officer told her he knew that wasn't true. When she insisted it was, saying he couldn't know since he wasn't there, he revealed something that made her go pale. I was his daughter. The security footage and witness statements quickly proved what really happened. When she was being arrested, she started screaming threats about suing the police, getting everyone fired, and making sure we'd all burn in hell. The woman's husband came to pick up their daughter and apologized profusely when he learned what happened. The mother is now serving time in prison for assaulting a minor, and her husband filed for divorce. Their daughter turned out to be way more mature than her mother. She kept apologizing even though none of it was her fault. Her father now owns a small shop and always gives me discount coupons when I visit. I've always been the mediator in my family, especially between my mother and my brother's household. I watched how my mother's constructive criticism would create rifts in the family. When my brother got married, I made it my mission to be the buffer. Better to have her vent to me than hurt others with her words. We established ground rules about certain topics being off limits, and I became her designated sounding board. It wasn't perfect, but it worked for almost 20 years. This strategy was put to the ultimate test during one memorable Thanksgiving at my brother's house. My mother, her husband, and I had traveled from out of town while the rest of the family lived nearby. Everything was set for a traditional family gathering until my sister-in-law's mother was rushed to the hospital that morning. The mood in the house was tense. My sister-in-law was at the hospital with her mother, and my niece and nephew were visibly distressed about their grandmother. You could feel their anxiety. They kept checking their phones for updates and whispering between themselves. As expected, my mother pulled me aside into the guest bedroom while everyone else was in the kitchen. She started complaining about my sister-in-law's absence from Thanksgiving dinner. I quickly reminded her that if she were the one in the hospital, her son wouldn't leave her side either, even on Thanksgiving, and pointed out that my sister-in-law's family wouldn't say a word about it. My mother reluctantly agreed but then switched to criticizing the children, saying they were being ridiculous with all their worrying and that they needed to accept that everybody dies. I had to explain to her that they were young and had never lost anyone close to them before, and that it was natural for them to be worried about their grandmother being in the hospital. She made a disapproving sound but dropped the subject, at least for the moment. The next day was Black Friday, and my sister-in-law spent it at the hospital again. That evening, my mother cornered me in the hallway, her face pinched with frustration. She declared that she wouldn't be coming back next year. When I asked why, she explained that her husband's dementia was getting worse and traveling was becoming too difficult. She suggested everyone should come to their house for next Thanksgiving instead, adding that she didn't feel welcome here anyway. I tried to reason with her, suggesting that we didn't need to decide anything now since a lot could change in a year and maybe by then they'd be able to travel more easily. But she insisted that I didn't understand. Her husband's dementia was only going to get worse and this situation wasn't going to improve. That's when I looked her straight in the eyes and delivered the line that would change everything. I simply said, "Well, everybody dies." The words hung in the air between us. I watched as different emotions played across her face. First anger, then shock, and finally recognition. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. The irony of having her own callous words thrown back at her hit home. She tried to protest, stammering that this was different, but I challenged her, pointing out the similarity between her worry about her husband's illness and the kids' concern about their grandmother's health. She walked away without another word, but I could tell the message had landed. Over the next few months, I noticed a significant change in how she spoke about her grandchildren's feelings. She became more understanding, more compassionate, particularly when they expressed worry or fear about family members' health. When her husband passed away a year later, I kept my promise to myself and never once reminded her that everybody dies. She grieved and we all supported her through it. And despite her dramatic declaration about never returning to my brother's house, she did come back for future holidays, this time with a noticeably softer approach to everyone's feelings. The last time we had a family gathering, I overheard her comforting my niece, who was worried about her cat's recent surgery. Instead of dismissing the concern, she gently told my niece that it was okay to be worried about the ones you love because that's what family is for, to care about each other.